Life has a way of teaching you hard lessons about family and trust. Sometimes those lessons come with a $200,000 price tag. I'm Amanda, and 6 months ago, I thought I was building my family's dream. Now I realize I was just funding their betrayal. It started during my divorce from Mike. After 10 years of marriage, I discovered he'd been lying about everything, from our finances to his supposed business trips. The divorce left me shaken but financially secure, thanks to the settlement and my successful career as a financial advisor. I'd always been good with money, saving aggressively while Mike spent lavishly. The irony doesn't escape me now. "Amanda, honey, we need to talk to you about something important," Mom said during our weekly Sunday dinner, 3 months after my divorce was finalized. I should have noticed the signs: Dad's favorite pot roast, Mom's special apple pie, my younger brother Peter's unusual presence on a weekend. They orchestrated the perfect setting for their pitch. "We want to start a family business," Dad announced, his eyes gleaming with that entrepreneurial spark I'd inherited from him. "A chain of high-end furniture stores. Your Uncle James is retiring and willing to sell us his warehouse at a discount. With your business acumen and our industry connections." I listened as they laid out their vision. It was compelling. They'd identified a gap in the local market for custom, locally made furniture. Dad had spent 30 years in furniture sales, Mom had her interior design credentials, and Peter had just finished his marketing degree. They just needed capital, my capital. "We need $200,000 for startup costs," Dad explained, sliding a business plan across the table. "We know it's a lot, but you're the only one in the family with that kind of savings. You'll be the majority shareholder, of course." I studied the proposal, impressed despite myself. The numbers made sense, the market analysis was solid, and the 5-year projections were realistic, if conservative. This wasn't just a pipe dream, it could work. "What about Peter's trust fund?" I asked, remembering the money our grandparents had left him. Mom shifted uncomfortably. Well, he invested it in cryptocurrency last year." Of course he had. Peter had always chased get-rich-quick schemes while I methodically built my savings. Now they were turning to their responsible daughter to fund their dreams. "I'll think about it," I promised, taking the business plan home to review more thoroughly. Over the next week, I dove deep into the numbers, conducted my own market research, and consulted with colleagues in the industry. The more I investigated, the more excited I became. This could be more than just a family business, it could be my chance to build something meaningful with the people I loved most. "I'm in," I told them the following Sunday. "But I have conditions." We spent hours hammering out the details. I would own 60% of the company, with my parents splitting 30% and Peter getting 10%. Major decisions would require majority shareholder approval. I would handle the financial side while Dad managed sales, Mom oversaw design, and Peter handled marketing. "This is going to be amazing, sis," Peter said, hugging me after we signed the papers. "You won't regret this." The first 6 months were exhausting but exhilarating. We transformed Uncle James's dusty warehouse into a gleaming showroom. I worked weekends helping Dad arrange furniture displays, weeknights reviewing contracts and vendor agreements. Mom's design expertise attracted several high-end clients, and Peter's social media campaign generated significant buzz before we even opened. Looking back, I should have noticed how they slowly began excluding me from key meetings. How they'd make decisions without consulting me, then present them as fait accompli. How they dismissed my concerns about spending with vague assurances about investment and growth. But I was too caught up in the excitement of our success. Our first quarter sales exceeded projections by 40%. We were featured in local business magazines. There was talk of opening a second location. Then came the day that changed everything. I was reviewing our quarterly financials when I noticed several large consulting payments to a company I didn't recognize. MPW Enterprises LLC. The amounts were substantial: $5,000 here, $7,500 there. None of these expenses had been approved by me. "Dad," I called, walking into his office with the statements, "what are these payments to MPW?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Just some consulting help with expansion plans. Nothing for you to worry about." "Nothing to worry about?" "These payments total over $50,000. I need to know what services we're receiving." Before he could answer, a familiar voice came from behind me. "Hello, Amanda." I froze. That voice, I'd hoped never to hear it again. Mike stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed in one of his expensive suits, wearing that confident smile I'd once loved and now loathed. MPW Enterprises, Mike Peter Wilson. My ex-husband's company. What is he doing here? I demanded, turning back to Dad. Mike's been helping us develop our expansion strategy, Dad explained, finally meeting my eyes. He has valuable experience in corporate growth. Experience? I laughed incredulously. He has experience in lying and manipulation. Or did you forget how he treated me? That was personal, Amanda, Mike said smoothly, stepping into the office. This is business. Your father and I have been discussing some exciting opportunities for the company. Without consulting me, I'm the majority shareholder. Any strategic decisions require my approval. Dad cleared his throat. About that, we've called a board meeting for tomorrow morning. There are some changes we need to discuss. The sick feeling in my stomach intensified. What changes? It would be better to discuss everything formally with everyone present, Mike replied. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Amanda, don't be late. I spent that night reviewing every document related to the business. The operating agreement, the shareholder agreements, the banking records. Something wasn't adding up. There were transfers I didn't recognize, documents I didn't remember signing. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, armed with files and determination. The conference room was already full. Mom, Dad, Peter, Mike, and a man I didn't recognize who introduced himself as their attorney. Let's begin, Dad said, nodding to the attorney. We've called this meeting to discuss a restructuring of the company's leadership. The attorney cleared his throat. Due to the company's rapid growth and expanding needs, the board proposes appointing Michael Wilson as Chief Executive Officer, with full operational control. The room started spinning. Excuse me? It makes sense, Amanda, Peter chimed in. Mike has real corporate experience. He knows how to scale businesses. And what about me? I managed to ask through clenched teeth. You'll retain your ownership stake, the attorney assured me, but operational decisions will fall under the CEO's purview. This is insane, I said, standing up. I invested my savings in this company. I built it with you. And now you want to hand control to my ex-husband. Amanda, Dad's voice was stern. You need to think about what's best for the business. Mike has the experience you lack. This isn't personal. I stared at them, my family, the people I trusted most, sitting there with my ex-husband, planning to push me aside. Actually, I said, pulling out my own file, we need to discuss something else first. Would anyone like to explain these documents I found last night? The color drained from Peter's face as I spread the papers on the table. Bank statements showing unauthorized transfers, corporate filings with forged signatures, and most damning of all, evidence that they'd been secretly working with Mike for months before the business even started. You planned this from the beginning, didn't you? I asked, watching their expressions. You needed my money to start the business, but you always intended to hand it over to Mike. The silence in the room was deafening. The silence in the conference room stretched until Mom finally spoke. Amanda, sweetie, you're making this sound worse than it is. We were just trying to do what's best for the company. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that made her flinch. Best for the company. Let's talk about what's best for the company. Let's start with these. I pulled out another stack of documents. Peter, want to explain why you transferred $75,000 of company funds to your personal account last month? My brother's face went pale. I needed it for marketing expenses. Marketing expenses? Is that what we're calling your new BMW? I turned to my parents. And Mom, those design consultation fees you've been charging, $15,000 for each project. Industry standard is a third of that. Mom at least had the decency to look ashamed. Dad, however, was turning red with anger. Now see here, he started, but I cut him off. No, you see here. I pulled out my phone and pressed play on a recording. Mike's voice filled the room. Don't worry about Amanda. Once I'm CEO, we'll restructure the company. She'll keep her shares, but we'll dilute them with new stock issuance. Within a year, she'll be a minority shareholder. Dad's voice followed. Just like we planned. She was always too cautious, too controlling with money. The business needs someone who thinks big. I stopped the recording, watching their faces. Mike's smooth facade had cracked, revealing the anger beneath. Peter looked like he might throw up. Mom was crying silently. When did you make that recording? Mike demanded. Does it matter? I've learned to protect myself, especially from people like you. I turned to the attorney, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. I assume you'll want to review these documents before proceeding with any leadership changes. Miss Carter, he said, gathering his papers, in light of this new information, I recommend we adjourn this meeting to review the legal implications. Agreed, I said, standing. And while you're reviewing, you might want to look into the legal implications of forging shareholder signatures and misappropriating company funds. Amanda, please. Mom reached for my hand. We can explain everything. I pulled away from her touch. Save it. I've already sent copies of everything to my attorney. I suggest you all prepare for a very interesting conversation with her. I walked out of the conference room, head held high, leaving chaos in my wake. But once I reached my car, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. That night, I sat in my home office, surrounded by financial records and legal documents. My phone kept buzzing with messages and calls from my family, but I ignored them all. Instead, I called the one person I knew I could trust. Sarah, it's Amanda. Remember when you offered to help me with corporate restructuring? I need your expertise. Sarah had been my mentor when I first started in financial advising. She warned me about mixing family and business, but she had supported me anyway. Now she listened silently as I explained everything. Those bastards, she said when I finished. But you've got them, Amanda. These documents, they're not just evidence of bad business practices. This is fraud. I know, I sighed. I never thought they'd do this to me, not my own family. Family or not, they tried to steal your company. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I stared at the photos on my wall. Family vacations, holiday gatherings, the grand opening of our store. All lies, all manipulation. I want to take back what's mine, I said firmly, and I want them to understand exactly what they've lost. Over the next week, I put my plan into action. First, I had Sarah help me freeze all the company accounts. As a majority shareholder, it was within my rights, especially given evidence of financial misconduct. The panic was immediate. Peter called first, ranting about supplier payments and payroll. Then Mom, crying about bounced checks. Dad showed up at my house, demanding I stop this nonsense. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I met with key employees one by one, explaining the situation and securing their loyalty. Most were horrified by my family's actions and gladly signed affidavits about what they'd witnessed. Your father tried to get me to backdate purchase orders. Our head of procurement told me. I kept copies of everything. The warehouse manager had similar stories. They wanted me to inflate inventory numbers for the insurance. I have all the real records. Each conversation revealed new layers of deception. My family hadn't just betrayed me. They'd been systematically undermining the business I built. The next step was harder. I contacted Uncle James, who was horrified to learn how his old warehouse was being used. I only sold because they said it was for you, Amanda, he admitted. I never trusted Mike, even when you were married to him. Would you be willing to make a statement about the original sale agreement? I asked. I'll do better than that, he replied. I kept recordings of all our negotiations. Your father specifically said you would be running the company. That's why I agreed to the below-market price. The evidence kept mounting. Every rock I turned over revealed another betrayal, another lie. But the final piece came from an unexpected source. Late one evening, as I was reviewing documents in my office, Peter showed up. He looked terrible. Unshaven, eyes bloodshot. I can't sleep, he confessed, slumping into a chair. I keep thinking about what we did, what I did. Why, Peter? I'm your sister. I've always helped you, always protected you. He couldn't meet my eyes. Mike approached me first, months before they even talked to you about the business. He said I could finally prove I was as good as you. That with his guidance, I could show everyone I wasn't just the family screw-up. So you helped him manipulate our parents, helped him steal my company. He had dirt on me, Peter whispered. Remember that cryptocurrency investment? It wasn't just my trust fund. I borrowed money from some dangerous people. Mike found out, said he'd help me if I helped him. I stared at my little brother, feeling a mix of pity and disgust. And now? Now I'm even deeper in debt. Mike's threatening to expose everything, and he pulled out his phone, hands shaking. I recorded some conversations with Mike and Dad, planning how they take control of the company, planning it all the way back before you invested. I took the phone, my heart pounding. Why are you giving me this? Because you're my sister, he said simply. And I forgot that meant something. After Peter left, I stayed up all night listening to the recordings. They were damning, detailed discussions of how they'd manipulate me, use my money, then push me out. My own father laughing about how trusting I was. Mike boasting about how he'd end up controlling everything. By morning, I had everything I needed. I called Sarah. It's time, I told her. Schedule a meeting for tomorrow. Let's end this. That night, I could barely sleep, thinking about what was to come. I'd given my family everything, my trust, my money, my dreams. Tomorrow, I'd show them exactly what that was worth. And Mike thought he'd won, thought he'd finally broken me. Tomorrow, he'd learn what happens when you underestimate the woman you betrayed. The morning of the meeting, I dressed carefully. A crisp black suit, pearl earrings Mom had given me for my 30th birthday, and the red-soled heels Mike had always hated. Too aggressive, he used to say. Today, aggressive was exactly what I needed to be. I arrived at the office early, nodding to the security team I'd hired. They knew their roles. Outside the conference room, Sarah waited with 2 other attorneys and a court reporter. Everything's ready, she assured me. They're all here. I checked my watch, 9:58 a.m. Let them sweat for a few more minutes. At precisely 10:15, I walked into the conference room. The tension was palpable. Mom sat rigid in her chair, Dad paced by the window, and Peter hunched over, staring at his hands. Mike lounged at the head of the table like he already owned the place. Amanda, he smiled. Finally joining us. I ignored him, taking my seat. Sarah and her team filed in behind me, setting up recording equipment and laying out documents. What's all this? Dad demanded. Who are these people? This, I said calmly, is what accountability looks like. I nodded to Sarah, who distributed folders to everyone. Please take a moment to review these documents. The room fell silent except for the rustle of papers and the occasional sharp intake of breath. I watched their faces as realization dawned. Bank statements, forged documents, transcripts of recorded conversations, witness statements. Mike recovered first. This is ridiculous. A desperate attempt to what, Mike? To expose how you and my family conspired to steal my company. How you planned this before I even invested. Page 3, everyone. The timeline of conspiracies. Mom started crying as she read. Dad's face turned purple. Peter just looked resigned. Let's start with the financial fraud, I continued. Mom's inflated consulting fees. Peter's unauthorized transfers. Dad's kickback scheme with suppliers, and Mike's consulting company bleeding us dry while laying the groundwork for a hostile takeover. You can't prove any of this, Mike snapped, but his confidence was cracking. I played Peter's recordings. Dad's voice filled the room, discussing their plans to dilute my shares. Then Mike, bragging about how they'd force me out once he took control. I trusted you, I said, looking at each of them. All of you. But you saw me as nothing but a bank account, a stepping stone to what you really wanted. Sweetheart, Mom pleaded, we never meant to get caught. I cut her off. That's obvious. But you did. And now there are consequences. I pulled out another document. This is a court order freezing all company assets pending investigation of financial misconduct. The police have already been notified about the fraud. Dad slumped in his chair. You'd send your own family to jail. You stopped being family the moment you chose him. I pointed to Mike over me. Mike stood up, straightening his tie. This is all very dramatic, Amanda, but you're forgetting something. The board. The board that you packed with your friends, they resigned this morning. Turns out nobody wants to be associated with fraud charges. I smiled. Check your phones. They all reached for their phones, finding emails from board members distancing themselves from the company. So here's what's going to happen. I continued. You have 2 choices. Option 1. You all resigned immediately, surrender your shares, and sign these agreements promising never to contest my ownership. In return, I don't press charges. And option 2. Peter asked quietly. I release everything to the authorities, every document, every recording, every witness statement. You all face fraud charges, and I still get the company after you're convicted. The silence was deafening. You can't do this. Dad started, but Sarah cut him off. She can and she will. I suggest you take the deal. Prison is unpleasant and fraud convictions make future employment difficult. Mike laughed, but it sounded hollow. You really think you can run this company without us? Without my experience? I stood up, walking to the head of the table. I already am. While you were all plotting against me, I was building relationships with our employees, our suppliers, our customers. They know who really built this company, and they're all staying with me. The agreement requires your signatures, Sarah said, sliding papers across the table. You have 5 minutes to decide before we contact the authorities. Peter signed first, not meeting anyone's eyes. Mom followed, tears staining the paper. Dad stared at me for a long moment before scrawling his signature. Mike held out the longest, his pen hovering over the paper. You'll regret this, Amanda. You always were too emotional for business. No, Mike. My emotions clouded my judgment once, when I married you. Never again. I checked my watch. 1 minute left. He signed. Security will escort you out, I said, pressing a button. Your personal items will be shipped to you. Don't attempt to contact me or enter any company property. As security led them away, Mom turned back. Amanda, please, we're still family. No, I replied coldly. You're just people who taught me a very expensive lesson about trust. After they left, Sarah squeezed my shoulder. You did it. I stared at the signed documents, feeling oddly empty. Was it worth it? They gave you no choice. They would have taken everything if you hadn't stopped them. I nodded, gathering the papers. Schedule a company meeting for this afternoon. The employees deserve to know what happened. That afternoon, standing before our employees, I told them everything about the betrayal, the fraud, the changes ahead. This company was built on lies, I concluded, but its future will be built on truth. Those who betrayed us are gone. Now we move forward together. The applause was deafening. 6 months have passed since that day in a conference room. Sometimes I still catch myself reaching for the phone to call Mom about a difficult client or thinking of asking Dad's advice about a new furniture line. Old habits die hard, even when trust is shattered. The business has flourished beyond my expectations. Without my family's excessive spending and Mike's consulting fees draining our resources, our profits have doubled. We opened a second location last month, and there's talk of expanding into neighboring states. The hardest part wasn't rebuilding the company, it was rebuilding myself. Every Sunday, when I drive past my parents' house on the way to brunch with Sarah, I feel the weight of what I've lost, or maybe what I never really had. Peter tried to reach out last week. He left a voicemail that I finally listened to after 3 days. Hey sis, his voice was rough, uncertain. I'm 6 months sober now. Part of the program is making amends. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I understand what I did, how badly I betrayed you. I'm working at a small marketing firm now, doing things the right way. If you ever want to talk, I haven't called him back. Not yet. Maybe someday. Mom sends cards for every holiday, thick with apologies and pleas to reconnect. Dad hasn't tried to contact me at all. Through the family grapevine, I heard he started drinking heavily, blaming me for destroying the family. And Mike? He tried to start a competing business 3 towns over. It failed within 4 months. Turns out his experience wasn't worth much without someone else's money to spend. You need to redecorate this office, Sarah remarked yesterday, looking at the family photos I still haven't taken down. Stop living in the past. She's right, of course. I've been holding on to memories that were probably never real to begin with. The loving family in those photos was just an illusion, a costume they wore while plotting to take everything from me. This morning, I finally did it. I took down every family photo, every reminder of what I'd lost. In their place, I put up pictures of our new store opening, our Employee Appreciation Day, the charity fundraiser we hosted last month. Real moments with people who've earned my trust. Uncle James stopped by the store today. He's been a rock through all of this, becoming the father figure I always wanted. You've done amazing things here, Amanda, he said, looking around the showroom. This place, it's more than just a furniture store. You've built a community. He's right. Our employees aren't just staff. They are family. The kind of family that's chosen, not born. The kind that supports each other without expecting anything in return. Last week, we started a program helping domestic violence survivors furnish their new homes. Next month, we're launching a mentorship initiative for young entrepreneurs, teaching them about ethical business practices and the importance of trust. You could have let this break you, Sarah told me over coffee this morning. Instead, you let it make you stronger. She's right. The betrayal nearly destroyed me, but it also taught me invaluable lessons about strength, about trust, about the difference between family by blood and family by choice. I'm not the same woman who naively handed over her savings to people who saw her as nothing but a bank account. That woman died in a conference room 6 months ago. In her place stands someone stronger, wiser, and finally free from the chains of toxic family obligations. Yesterday, I received an envelope from Mom. Inside was my grandmother's pearl necklace, a family heirloom she'd promised me since childhood. The note read, "These belong to you. I'm sorry we forgot what family really means." I donated the necklace to a women's shelter auction. Some things are too heavy to carry forward into a new life. The company's name has changed now, no longer Carter Family Furniture, but simply Trust Home Furnishings. A reminder of what was lost, what was gained, and what matters most. As I lock up the store tonight, watching the sunset reflect off our new signage, I feel at peace. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from those who would destroy you in the name of love. I am Amanda Carter, and this is my company, my success, my story. Not the story I thought I'd be telling, but maybe the one I needed to live. The betrayal cost me $200,000 and the illusion of a loving family, but what I gained, strength, wisdom, and true independence, is priceless.